Good afternoon and welcome to the award-winning Ed Brown Show. I am your host, Kamaria T. Richmond, and we have another wonderful show for you today. We are talking to Larry LaRose, and he is an actor and speaker and a performance coach. And so we're going to talk today about business and how we can translate business and acting as one, kind of so. So thank you, Larry, and welcome back to the show.
Yes, thank you. I'm just very happy to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here.
Good.
So tell us about this venture.
Okay, well, there was, before I got into like the acting thing for full time, like what I do right now, I was actually involved in corporate America. And I was involved with a business that was was growing very quickly. Mm-hmm. And we actually went from revenues of $41 million to $1 billion in 5 years. And this was back in the 90s. So it was not like it is today. We didn't have the tech startups or anything like that. This was actually a physical business with stores that we also grew from 41 operations to over 1,500 in that same amount of time.
Amazing.
So as we were growing, as we were putting on this massive growth, as a matter of fact, Fortune magazine said we were the 5th fastest growing company in America in 1997. And that's what Fortune magazine said, not me. So anyway, I was very busy in that, and I ran one of the most profitable operations in the company. And when I got out of there, people were pointing to the fact that I was always able to like bring in these profits, and I won a whole bunch of awards, a bunch of management awards. I think I won 30 of them. For manager, you know, my management. I won Manager of the Year for one of the companies. So I did a lot of performing in that arena, in the business arena. So when I got out of that, I started to realize one of the things that helped me become really successful was that I used a lot of my theater training in the business, such as in the way I related with people, in the way I spoke with people. I think that you have like a couple of different personas in your life.
Right.
I think you're one person when you go home. You're a different person when you go to business or when you go to your career or whatever. And you're probably a different person socially too. So there's like 3 different yous going on during the day. So I would go to work every day, and I was either the manager or eventually I became a regional manager. So I worked my way up in that. But when I got home, I was anything but the boss. So, because there was already a boss there, and, you know, and she knew what she was doing. So anyway, so I think there's different personas that we use, and I think part of my business persona was involved in what I was doing in theater, because I was always involved in theater while I was also doing the management and the regional management. Okay. In the evenings, I would be doing Shakespeare or any other kind of play that was going on at the time. So I always had my toe dipped in the theater activity, but I was able to bring what I was learning in the craft of acting and in the things that go on in theater, and I was able to bring that to business. Because there's a lot of parallels that can go with that. You know, acting helps you develop good relationship building skills. It helps you with communication skills. It helps you with, believe it or not, listening skills. One of the most important things that an actor can develop for himself is listening skills. Listening to your co-stars, listening to your directors, listening to the people that do the tech work, even. An actor has to be very flexible, and he has to listen to everybody, he or she, and you have to relate. You have to relate to each other in a believable way. You can't just spout lines. Now, a lot of people think that's what it is, but it really isn't. Acting is about developing relationships. Developing a relationship with the people that you're on stage with, developing a relationship with the audience that's out there. So no one has to establish a relationship faster than an actor on stage with his audience. Because if you don't do that, you fail.
Yes.
So if you're not relating to the audience, you've already failed. Same thing when you're dealing with customers or clients or the people that you deal with in your business. You have to establish a relationship with them, because relationships are the things that sell. Relationships are the things that make your business grow.
Absolutely.
All right? It's not your product or service. I mean, I've taught vice presidents that all sold the same Cisco products. And they all gave me the same spiel about their Cisco products. Well, I didn't care about the Cisco products. They're all the same.
Right.
What I cared about is, why do I do business with your company? And I taught them how to develop a story for their company, because people buy stories.
Interesting. Yes.
Right? They don't buy the products, they buy you.
Right.
They buy the person that's selling them to them. When I was in corporate America, I was actually stolen by a couple different companies, because I was running successful operations. So they would come into town and they would try and steal me from my current company. And what would happen is, a good percentage of my customers, like over 50%, would follow me to the new operation. Now, we had it was the same basic business, but they didn't care about the products as much as they cared about the person that was selling them.
Right.
All right, the person that was giving them to them. So that's what I decided. Well, my acting experience is helping me with my relationships with my customers. I should build a business around using acting and theater skills in business. So I had this idea for a while, and then a colleague of mine came up, somebody whom I knew through the National Speakers Association. And he was a businessman. He was a salesperson, basically a salesman, very successful. And he said to me, "Larry, you're a really great actor. Can you teach me that?" And I thought to myself, you know what? Yeah, I can do that. And so he's the one who planted the idea in my head to start coaching people on acting skills and putting them in the business, because that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to develop acting skills, to tell better stories, to sell his products and services to his fellow salespeople. So that's how I got started with this whole thing.
And I mean, I had never even heard of such a thing until we started talking. And I'm like, okay, well, that does make sense. And because you know what, you can see the same person over and over and over, but if you like that person, you're going to continue to do business. And sometimes you don't even get 100% good service, but you really like that person. You're like, you become attached. You're like, okay, somebody else could really do this a little better, but I just love you.
Yeah. So I do business with you. I mean, the oldest sales axiom in the world is people do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you want to get people to know you, you want to get them to like you, you want to get them to trust you. So that's why I teach people, look, acting is about truth. Acting is about getting to the truth of the scene. Acting is about getting to the truth of the character. Okay? Acting is becoming believable, like your real life.
Right.
Right? We, when you talk about good actors recite lines.
Yes.
You know, good actors build relationships. They build relationships on the stage, they build relationships on the camera, they build relationships with the audience. Good business people build relationships with people. So the acting skills, building relationships, all goes hand in hand.
Okay.
Acting can actually enhance your ability to establish relationships with clients and the people that you do business with.
Well, tell us about your workshops, because you're doing some interesting things and making a difference in the lives. You know, if Larry is my coach, then I can use acting to so that I can speak and I can present myself. So tell us about your workshop.
Okay, the workshop came about pretty much from the same colleague, because as I started to develop, I started to work with him one-on-one, and he started to get better and better, and we developed stories, and I helped him with his writing. We did everything from the ground up, basically, to develop his business and his persona and how he presents. It's actually how I got to be involved with some vice presidents of tech companies, was through this particular relationship. And I taught them theater techniques to build their stories for their companies, to get people to relate to them, to want to do business with them. So I developed this workshop because somebody said to me that they wanted me to come and teach their colleagues. They thought that I could teach presentation techniques to the professional people that they were dealing with. And the person who came to me with that was involved with NASA headquarters. And she said, I think that, my class at NASA could, and she was a human resource person, and she said, I think my class at NASA could use some of the things that you teach in storytelling. So I started to put together this workshop based on my experiences in theater. And I thought, okay, what would people need? So I started to develop vocal techniques and movement techniques, and I thought about improvisation exercises that I learned in acting. Because vocal techniques will teach you how to speak well. Movement techniques, most people don't realize, but where you are standing on a stage, when you deliver a particular line, where you are in relationship to the audience is all important when you're delivering that line. And it has an impact depending on where you are on the stage. Okay. Now, once you master that and you know where your impact points are on the stage, you can actually move that to any room that you're in. So you can basically own any room using theater techniques. And then I thought improvisation exercises are good for executives because you have to be able to think on your feet. Okay. Improvisation gets you to think on your feet because you have to come up with something when you're doing improv. And then I thought about, I actually invented 2 exercises for my workshop. One was the intention exercise. And I would love to explain it to you, but you really have to be there to do it. Right. But it's a way of developing your intention before you open your mouth in a situation. So it's great for like developing influencing skills or developing cooperation skills, anything of that nature. So it's a great exercise for that. So I invented this intention exercise, which has changed some people's lives, literally. Okay. And then I developed an exercise called increasing your sphere of influence. And it's all about presence. It's all about having presence, not just camera presence or stage presence or speaking presence. How do you go out on stage and like encompass a room of 3,000 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people, whatever it is. And I kind of based that on, I had a voice teacher who told me once that she would talk about Luciano Pavarotti, who was the great tenor who passed away a few years ago. Yes. But he was a great performer. And he was a big man, rather large man. Yes. So she said that when Pavarotti would walk on the stage, he would give the audience a giant bear hug. So I devised my sphere of influence exercise around Pavarotti's presence. So I turned it into an exercise to develop presence so that you, as a business person, walks into a room of people that either want to do business with you, haven't done business with you yet, but you want to influence to do business, and you expand your sphere of influence to include them in the conversation that you want to have with them.
Makes perfect sense.
And that's owning the room, in my opinion.
Owning the room.
Owning the room.
Yeah, and if you want to be successful, you have to do that. But you have something, that goes along with that. When was the last time someone remembered you, or you have a wonderful quote like that?
Yeah.
When was someone memorable?
When was the last time someone told you you were positively memorable?
Yes.
Yeah. I think making a connection with an audience, a person, whatever, you have to be memorable. You have to be unique in some way. You have to have, everyone has their own gifts, and everyone should know what their gift is. And I think that when I'm working in my workshops with my acting techniques and that, I can help you discover what your gift is. And it varies from person to person. But you have to be memorable when you're giving a presentation. I'll give you an example. When I was a regional manager, I used to do all the interviews for all the employees. I had 100 employees. So when I was replacing employees, I had to do all the interviews. Now, here's what typically happens. You put out a job description, and people send you resumes. And then you schedule interviews. Now, you might have a whole day of interviews, and you might have 10 people coming in. All right? 10 people will come in and tell you the same thing. They'll tell you the same thing that's on their resume because they have the same qualifications as the person before them. They're coming for the same job. And pretty soon, as the interviewer, you start to get bored.
Right, bored.
You don't, you just go one applicant by the other applicant by the other applicant. Now, for me, the person that got hired was the person I remembered at the end of the day. So what did you do in your interview that made me remember you? Because at the end of the day, I've done 10 interviews. They were all the same. The person I'm most likely to hire is whichever one was memorable, whichever one stuck in my mind at the end of the 10 interviews, which I probably did in 8 hours or 10 hours, right? So who stood out in that amount of time probably got the job. So when was the last time somebody told you you were positively memorable?
Oh, I hope you tell me that today.
Well,
but tell us, how do we become that? How do we do it? We know we need you as a coach, but kind of walk us through the process.
well, I'd like to say that the process is different for everybody. Some people have a gift for speaking. Some people have a gift for presence.
Yes.
Some people, some people have a combination, and some people are just terribly shy, or terribly awkward.
Right.
I have a client who's terribly awkward. He's very, very stiff on camera and in person, both. So with him, I work on visualization. There we go, where he sees himself differently, because he kind of sees himself stiff. So I work with him on acting techniques, because part of acting is visualization, is seeing things. Especially today with these blockbusters that are going on with the green screens and everything, you have to pretend that things are there that really aren't there. So there's a lot of acting exercises that can help you pretend to be things that you're really not. What I like to say to people is, if you really want to be strong, if you really want to have a strong persona, is imagine yourself a stronger version of yourself. All right? Imagine yourself not the shy person, but the person that stands up. Perfect example, my wife, classic introvert. However, when she gets on stage, she's amazing. She'll take the stage. When we did a production of 12th Night, she played Olivia, which is the main female character, well, the second main female character in the show. Now, my wife's classic introvert at home. But when she came out on that stage, she basically took the stage. You probably, for the most part, the rest of the characters on the stage disappeared. But she's practiced. She's practiced in the acting field, so she knows how to command the presence on the stage. When she comes on stage, she makes a big presence, and people pay attention. Now, you've met these people in your life. You've probably been in a room that was full of people, and that one person walks through the door, and you just know that that's the person.
Yes.
You either want to talk to that person, you want to have a conversation, you want them to know your name, something. They have something. They take the room. They have a confidence. They have an ability. So what I do with my students, especially if they're classic introverts, is give them those things. Because acting increases your confidence. If you know that you speak well, if you know how to control your vowels and your consonants when you're speaking, if you know your movement, if you know where to work the room, how to work the room, if you know the way you look, because actors always know the way they look. We do mirror exercises, which is something that's in the workshop. There's a mirror exercise where you know how you look. You know what, you know where you're standing. You know how you're positing yourself so that you're making the best impression possible. You see these people. You can become one of those people by simply practicing these same exercises that I teach in this workshop. You can do the mirror exercises at home with a mirror. In the workshop, you do them with a partner.
And they're a little challenging because, I tried them. I tried a few.
They're even more challenging with a real person in front of you.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. There's always some person, especially let's say if there's like singers, there's always that one person that you just focus on, and that's the person that really comes out and they do really, really well. But I wanted to ask you, because you talk about communication, the relationships, the influence, personal skills, storytelling, and that's really interesting.
Well, again, people buy stories. They really do. People buy the stories that you tell them, and what I think is that what separates great companies are the great companies that have a great story. If you can tell a great story about. And I did this with a vice president of a tech company. I looked at him and he, what I teach people is come up and give me your best line, come up and give me your best pitch, because I'm probably going to change it, because most people pitch their product's features. They don't pitch the benefits. They don't tell a story about why you should do business with them. And this guy did exactly what I thought. He was a Cisco reseller. He sold Cisco products, technical products. So he came up and gave me a whole spiel about Cisco products, which was really boring, really awful. And I told him, just shut up, you're boring me. I'm probably not going to do business with you.
Right.
And so he was kind of shocked. And he said, well, what should I be doing? He said, tell me about your company. And he told me about how his company was started by two guys out drinking beers, and they drew this idea for this company on the back of a napkin, and that's how they developed his company. And now the company's a big Cisco company, and they're doing very well, even though he doesn't have a good story to tell. I said, how would you like to be doing even better by telling the story? So I gave him a story about tell people two guys walk into a bar, and they sit down at a table, they order a couple beers, they draw out a business on the back of a napkin, and they start a company, my company. You were expecting a joke, weren't you?
Yes.
Now, the next day, he calls me up and says, I used that line on a new customer today, and I have a new customer today.
And it's that simple.
Because now he's telling a story about his business. So storytelling is part of getting people to do business with you. Telling a great story. But telling a great story is more than just reciting the words in the story. Like we read fairy tales to our kids. That's a story.
Right.
It doesn't have any business implications or anything. But if you can tell a story about your business, or tell a story about your life, or tell a story about why I should be listening to you, and your expertise, because people learn stories. People learn in stories. I mean, Jesus taught in parables. There was a reason. Because people learn through stories. And that's why he told stories. Lots of people tell stories. And that's how people learn. I mean, cavemen drew stories on the wall.
Right.
Okay, so people learn in stories. So not only should you learn to put a story together, but you should learn how to deliver it. You should deliver it in a way that's going to be memorable.
Right.
Because if you tell a memorable story, at the end of the day, the person that you talk to is going to remember you, remember your story, and they're going to want to do business with you.
Right, right. And is it really challenging for a lot of people?
It's very challenging.
To do that?
It's very challenging.
Yeah.
What I find most people think that their stories are boring. And when they start, they probably are. I mean, I'm not, my students come to me with boring stories. They just come in and they haven't thought about the words they're using. They haven't thought about sentence structure. They haven't thought about, does that sentence flow, or does it stop, or is it choppy, or is your phrasing not smooth, or does that word that you're using not invoke the right thought in the person's mind? Because I find that great storytelling is also great wordsmithing, where you put the right words in the right order.
Yes.
So that your story flows. Most of the time what they show me is choppy, or it's not something that I'm interested in really listening to for a long period of time. I'll give you an example. I had a student who brought me a PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint was based on his family. And it was very dramatic because he was trying to cure the world of diabetes, because he had diabetes. And he had cured himself of it through his diet and exercise program. So this guy was very disciplined. He was also a doctor.
Okay.
He was a doctor of radiology. But that wasn't his passion. His passion was helping people with diabetes, which had nothing to do with his radiology career.
Right.
So what we started with him was I took his PowerPoint, which was terrible. I mean, it was boring. It was like a PowerPoint. It was just a PowerPoint. And I said, what is this PowerPoint? And he said, this is the story of my family. And what he did was he showed all the people in his family who died of diabetes. And they all died at a very young age. So it wasn't entertaining, okay? But he didn't weave his story into it. So there was no story for the PowerPoint. It was just basically a boring PowerPoint put up on the wall. Well, people don't relate to that.
And that's an amazing story.
It is an amazing story.
That's an amazing story.
But he didn't think about telling his story. He thought about telling his PowerPoint.
Okay.
Which is just basically slides and you mouthing something that doesn't normally make sense. I, for one, do not like PowerPoint. I do not use it. I rely on the power of the word, of the spoken word and the written word. Because I think if you really want to be successful with getting people to do business with you or getting people to relate to you and your products and your services, you need to reach their imagination.
Yes.
And the way you reach their imagination is by telling a great story. Because it's your story, but that person's not going to see it the way that you see it. They're going to see it the way that they imagine it by the way you deliver it.
Absolutely.
So if you don't deliver the details of the story, I can't see it in my imagination. If I can't see it in my imagination, I am not going to relate to you.
Right.
So the best storytellers are the people that prick the audience's imagination, gets them to see the things that they want them to see, only in the context of the receiver's imagination, not your imagination, because I wasn't there when you're telling this story.
Right,
Right?
absolutely.
But I can relate my experiences. So his story was, I cured myself of diabetes by a certain diet and exercise program. Here's a person, and he was primarily the African-American population because they have a higher rate of diabetes than, you know, than the rest of the population. So that was his target. So we had a target market for him. We had people that he could help. But here's the funny thing, as he started to do more and more of these presentations and he got his story into it, he started getting Caucasian women wanted to come and learn from him. So not only was he able to reach the audience that he wanted, he expanded his audience by using his story.
By using the story.
And therefore, he expanded his customers. He expanded the money that he was making. He stopped doing radiology. Now he just helps people with diabetes. So
oh, wow.
it not only did his story change his business, but it changed his life.
And that's what we want, because you're right. You're just not talking about business when you talk about living your best life.
Living your best life.
And so this is how we living our best life?
Well, part of living your best life is living your story.
Yes.
Or telling your story. So for most people, their business is sometimes based on their story. Let's hope it's based on something you have a passion for. And most of the time, people develop passions from things that they've done.
Right.
Hopefully they've done them. You know, I still joke about National Speakers Association has 3,500 members, 2,000 of them speak on leadership, and 1,500 of them haven't led anything. So they shouldn't be talking about it.
They shouldn't be talking about it.
Most of my students, I move into passion. I moved into what have you done that you're really, really passionate about, or that you really, really have a talent in, or that you're really, really good at. And maybe you don't have a passion for it, but you're really good at it.
Right.
You might want to make a business out of that.
That'll work as well.
You know, you might have a talent for something. You may not be passionate about it, but you might have a really, really good innate talent for it. So you might want to make a business out of that, or at least make a side business out of it.
Right.
But I also think that people should go where their talents are. And if you go where your talent is and you develop a great story around it, and you turn that into a business, because that story, that talent, whatever is your brightest star, I'd like to say, everybody has a bright star. You just need to light it.
Right.
You know, you need to find it and light it. So if you make a business out of that bright star, the chances are your business is going to be more successful if you ignite it.
Okay.
If you get to that point where you have it shining its brightest. And I think all of these techniques help you get to that point where you're shining.
How can people reach you?
Oh, that's really easy. You can go to, well, a couple things. You can find me on Facebook, Larry LaRose. I'm there. I usually pop up first. You can search me on the web. You can also look at LarryLaRose.com. Real simple. LarryLaRose.com. My name. You can go there. You actually do your first acting lesson for free by going to my homepage on the net.
Well, thank you so much, Larry, for being a guest on the Ed Brown Show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.